had to go before to set, they were repeated, just drop it. So this is part of why they are disruptive in the class, is because they're bored. Because they're already learning much faster than the other kids. So they need to have a whole new system. In some of these conferences, they're trying to educate the educators so that they will be able to help with these children. So I asked them, what can we do with these children to help? They said, give them challenges. So if the teachers would know this, just to give them something to do outside of the class. If they've already finished their other thing they were working on, give them something else. Even if we give them something to tear apart and put back together again, it gives them something to focus on, something different, a challenge. And that's the way to approach it, not by sedating them and putting them on drugs and treating them as different, because these are the ones who will help change the world. But I found these 3 waves of volunteers that have come in. And I think you'll recognize a lot of these. A lot of us, the rest of us, are still catching up because we have to get rid of the karma. But they're here to definitely help. But they're having a very difficult time, especially the first wave, because it's not easy to be here. But they did volunteer to come in and help. I should probably bring up one more thing that's happening. I'm trying to keep this in order. Another amazing thing that has happened in my work, we have the people coming in. I said the volunteers. They're volunteered to come in. And something else was happening. Now that we're getting close to the time of the new earth, it's a little late to wait for them to come in as babies, have to grow up. So they've had another phenomenon that's happening that is a first, that first I've heard of anyway. They said, suppose somebody's going through a near-death experience, and they really want to go. You know, they had the one case where the mother had died and the daughter wanted to go on with her. And so they said, okay, you can go if you want to. But it's not a walk-in. A walk-in is a totally different thing. They have a volunteer who wants to come, and they said, all right, you can go in. Their soul never been on earth before. You can go in. But they make an agreement with the other person. You want to go, you can go on.
Bullshit. Really? Really?
A walk-in is a totally different thing. They have a volunteer who wants to come, and they said, all right, you can go in. Their soul never been on earth before. You can go in. But they make an agreement with the other person. You want to go, you can go on. But they enter the body of someone who later will say, I've had a near-death experience. They don't realize they really did die. This new soul came in. It's a little complicated to understand. But they said they have 2 minutes to get in, and that's it. After the old soul leaves, the new one has to get in there within 2 minutes. Otherwise, the body can't be activated and can't continue on with what it's doing. Because in the cases I'm finding like this, the person themselves does not know any of this. They just continue on their own life. If you try to take them into a past life, it doesn't work. They go back to the point that this soul entered the body. And that's what it'll tell me. Well, we had 2 minutes to get in here while the old one left, and they said they're perfectly happy over there where they wanted to go. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not like a suicide, and it definitely isn't a walk-in. It's a whole different perspective. So this is something new that I'm finding. And there have been other cases. Sometimes, I'm kind of getting off in a lot of this, but another direction. Sometimes these new souls that are coming in, their energy is so strong that it's difficult to come into the body of a baby because it doesn't match. Anybody following me with all this? I'm afraid I don't want to get over your head. Okay. The energy is different. The frequencies and vibrations are different than the human body is coming through. So sometimes when they try to come in, it's too strong for the developing fetus, and it will end up in an abortion because the mother can't handle it. It's just too much energy. The frequencies don't match. So they'll say, okay, we've got to do it again. We have to adjust some of these frequencies. Otherwise, it won't work. It would harm the mother. The baby couldn't survive. So a lot of times they will wait until the baby is born, and then they can make the adjustments outside of it as the soul is entering at the moment of birth. So they are finding a lot of ways to do this. And these people grow up being different. They're unusual. They're not your normal people that we're used to. But they're here to help, and it's very important and very powerful that they be here at this time. So this is some of the stuff I'm finding that did not go along with what I was learning in the beginning of my work. It just keeps evolving and changing. Now, it is important, I think, that I do explain about God, about the God source. I've got a whole section, and I first found out about it in, I think it was Convoluted One. It was the first time I had somebody go back to where they were with God. And now it's coming up so much that I've got a whole section about it. Well, what is God? What is the God source? They always call it the source. It's the same thing. What is it? Again and again and again. They said, I got it the first time. Why don't they? Is where everything's total love. It has no sex. It has no definition. They told me, I think it was in the book Between Death and Life, when I first asked about God, back when I wrote that book about 15 years ago. They said, the God is the glue that holds everything together. If it were to wink out for a fraction of a second, everything would disappear. It's so powerful. But they said, your concept of God is like a tiny thread compared to what it really is. You have no concept, you can't understand it. Then they said, imagine those people who are not even into this. Their concept of God isn't even like a tiny thread. They have no idea of what it is. Because the church still has it as a being sitting up there on a throne, punishing people. It is a huge, powerful energy source that is tremendous. We all came from that. And it's a totally different way. Imagine people not wanting to leave that. Especially the ones that are sent down here now, and they're coming into this. They call it the muck and the mire. They say it's like a call on fly paper, and they don't like it. I told you the other day, when you come in, all the memories are erased, so you don't remember this. Imagine the confusion it causes. But let me go back to the beginning and explain how you all started out. And then I think you'll understand it a little better. Okay, in the beginning, we were all part of the source. We were all part of God. Everybody came from the same place. I have people coming in with their list of questions. Where did I come from? So we all came from the same place at the same time. They think they came from another planet, or what was their home? We all started out, home is God. It's the source. This huge, loving, total energy. So that's where we all began, in total love. And when I'm speaking to people when they're there, they don't want to leave. It is so total beautiful. And when they have to separate and leave, it is a feeling of separation, of loneliness, that I want to go back. That's the feeling of wanting to go home. So we have all experienced that. Because in the very beginning, it was this huge, huge energy source. In my new books, they're telling me there was more before that, but I'm not going to go into that right now. It gets very, very confusing. That's what they keep saying, there is more. But anyway, we all began as this huge energy source that was God. He wanted to explore. He wanted to learn. So he exploded out. That's what is called the Big Bang Theory. He exploded out, and all these particles and sparks flew out in all directions. Some of these sparks became galaxies, some became planets. Many, many of them became the individual souls. When you take you back to what you really, really are, you're only a tiny, tiny spark. And the people see themselves as that. The soul, the real you, is a tiny, tiny spark that all flew out at the same time when God decided he wanted to explore. They all flew out at that time. And he says, go and learn. Learn as much as you can and bring it back. So that was the whole idea. We're sent out to explore, to learn lessons. That's what all the lives are about, what all the mistakes are about. Nothing is bad, nothing is good. It's all experiences. What do you learn from it? Everything we learn, we eventually take back. Somebody asked me the other day, when do we stop going? Well, when this whole process starts. So everything in the universe is about accumulating knowledge and information. Everything is about it. The ETs are the same way. They're here to accumulate knowledge and to put it into their computer banks also. But we are here to learn everything we can possibly learn from every life imaginable. That's why you can't do it in one lifetime. That's why you have to have lives as ETs, other planets, energy beings. This is only one school. There are many, many other schools you have been to and you will go to. All of us have been on other planets and other dimensions. And when you get tired of this life here and you think you're finished, you may decide, okay, I'm going to go over to this other planet and see what it's like over there. It's all about exploring and learning more and more. And then we accumulate this and bring it back. In this way, we are cells in the body of God, constantly learning information and transferring it back. So this is what I found out, that even if you don't go into the other lives on other planets and energy beings, when you come to Earth, in Earth school, you have to be everything. This means everything. There's a whole section in the new book where I've had people go back to where they weren't human. I found out, I'm going to put it in linear order, even though I know now it doesn't happen that way. But, for instance, you have to be part of the air. The first time I ever had that happen to somebody, and it's in a book that's out of print now, the one called Legacy from the Stars, a young man wanted to go back to the first life he'd ever lived on Earth. He went back to where he was, when Earth was forming. It hadn't had any life on it yet. There were volcanoes erupting, there was ammonia in the air, and he was still forming to where plants, nothing was here yet. So he was part of the atmosphere with many others, helping to clean the ammonia out of the atmosphere so that life could begin to form. So I kept thinking, here he's a chemical or whatever, and yet he's still communicating with me. So then I found out you have to know what everything is. So you have all done this. And then you have to know what it's like to be the dirt. What is it like to be a rock? I've had people be rocks. Everything is alive. Everything is energy. It's all just vibrating at different frequencies. And when I've had them be a rock, they'll say life is very slow. Doesn't move very fast. And sometimes when they've gone through a life like that, it was teaching them to appreciate freedom. Because look how confining it would be to be a rock. That's what they told me. So you have to learn all of these things, even if it's something simple like that. So then after you go through that, you have to know what it's like to be plants. And I've had many, many past lives where people were flowers, they were ears of corn, they were grass. And it's all, what did you learn by being that? Everything is alive. Everything has something to teach us. That's what we're trying. You can notice you can be more aware of nature, be more aware of your environment, and protect the environment more if you know you were all a part of it. Everything is a part of each other. And we're not separate. That makes a big difference. Then you have to know what it's like to be an animal. What would it be like to be a wolf and be able to run? What would it be like to be a bird and be able to fly? In the new book, I've got a whole section on life in other forms like this. All of it is teaching us something. Even if they just go through, I had somebody be a little yellow worm, but it was teaching her something that she went through that lifetime. So we eventually get up to the part where we are human. Now, in between there with the plants and the animals are the little people, the fairies and the gnomes and the elves. They're very real. They are the keepers of nature. And we've all been those also. We all have to learn all the parts of all these things so we have it, and it's all in our memory. In one part of the book, they said, you must realize that even the dust of the earth is alive as a bird in flight. It's all alive. And we've all been it. We've all done it. But now we go into the humans. Okay, when you finally get to the human stage, what do you got to learn? Everything. Everything. You have to be male and female many, many times. And when I say that, usually people, I've had men say, wait a minute, I've always been a man. What do you mean? I've never been a woman. But what would you learn if you were only one sex forever? You wouldn't learn what it would be like to be the opposite. You wouldn't be balanced. So if you've been one sex too many times, then they'll say, okay, it's time to be the other one now to learn what it's like to be on the opposite. This I've found is one of the reasons for homosexuality. And it makes perfect sense. It's time to try the other role, and they don't feel comfortable with it. You hear men that say, I feel like I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, because they're making this adjustment for the first time. So I had one man come up to me at a lecture, and he said, finally, something that makes sense. But you have to be male and female many, many times. Then you have to be every race on earth. You have to be in every religion on earth. You have to live on every continent, every nationality on earth, which can take a lot of lives. You have to know what it's all about and what it's like. If people understood the rules of reincarnation, there would be no prejudice. There would be no judging. Because you would know you have been these religions or these races, or you are going to be. If you're too judgmental, guess what you're going to come back as? The very thing that you were prejudiced against, or the very thing you were judging. That's how karma works. And I've seen it time and time again in the sessions that I do. You have to be on the other side of the coin. That's how karma works. So if we knew that, we wouldn't be judging. We wouldn't be prejudiced. Of course, they said if everybody knew these things, there wouldn't be war, there wouldn't be violence. We would have heaven on earth if we could just understand this. This is where we're headed anyway, is to where it's all supposed to just end up eventually. But then you have to be everything. You have to be rich, you have to be poor, have to be in every single situation that is possible to be before you're done. And she was asking me, when do you get finished? You can see it's a big thing. You can't do it in one lifetime. You can do many things in one lifetime, but you can't do it all. So we have to keep coming back and get it again until we get it right. And usually when I'm saying these things, some people in the audience look very discouraged, And I'll say, But I'd like to think when you get to this point, when you're asking questions and wanting to know more information, then I think you probably finished all these lessons and you're on your way out because you finally understand it. You're finally beginning to get it. But I like to think. Especially with the new earth coming up. You don't want to think you're back here at the beginning with all of this stuff you have to learn. So all these different lifetimes, which will go on for millennia, you're going back and forth to the spirit side between each one, getting advice, looking at your next assignments, going back and forth. Finally, when you've got it all, then you can graduate. Don't have to come back to earth again. Don't have to come to any other lives again. Then you return to the source. You return to God. Full cycle. You begin there. When you've learned it all, you return. And then you download, I guess, into the gigantic computer everything that you have learned, and it becomes part of all of the knowledge that God is. And then some people will say, then what? And that's when I asked them, what happens then? I said, what does God do with all of this knowledge and all of this information that is constantly being brought back to him? They said he uses it to create something else. Constant creation all the time. And so he uses what we bring back, all the experiences, all the knowledge, all of the problems, all of the heartaches, and he creates something else. And even the whole universe and everything is in a state of reincarnation because it's expanding out and out and out and out. And they've told me then after a certain time, it all comes back. Like imploding back until it maybe, because they said the earth accumulates information from everybody that lives on it. The sun accumulates information from all of the planets in the solar system. The other suns are doing the same thing. It's all communication devices. And they are all accumulating information from universes. Can you imagine the massive amount of information? We're all like little parts of a gigantic computer. So then eventually it does it all and it becomes back, implodes back. And I said, then what happens? He said, then it explodes out again. So it's a constant recycling of information. Does this sound discouraging to you? Because people say it begins to make more sense when you understand your part in the whole thing. Well, that's why there is no evil, there is no bad, no good. It's all experiences. And what did you learn from it? You didn't learn anything, you've got to do it again. Because you don't get out of it. You don't get out of this school, you can't skip a grade. You can have to repeat a grade. But then you finally get it all done and you go back and you dump it all. And they want to stay with that because it is so beautiful. But then they go out again. And I had one man in one of my classes say, well, eventually we should get to the point where there's nowhere else to go. When can we just finally stop? We've gone to all the lifetimes. We've gone to all the planets. Then what happens then? Finally, you think you should be able to just stop. And the answer was, there's other universes. There's other dimensions. It's endless. In the new book, they told me about universes that obey other rules that we don't have here, where the planets are square. They're oval. They're triangle. They're moving in all kinds of weird orbits that we can't possibly imagine. And I said, but that doesn't obey the law of physics. They said it obeys the law of physics of that galaxy, of that universe. So it's beyond our comprehension. We think we know it all, and we don't. It keeps evolving out and out and out. So you can imagine what we have to learn. That's why they said we cannot possibly know it all. There's too much for our limited minds to know it all. They're giving us little bits and pieces because now they think we're at the time we can understand. Look where we were 30 years ago. We couldn't begin to understand any of this. So our minds are being opened to where we can understand it and accumulate more now. And the reason is because we're going into the new earth. I'm going to try to leave some room here for questions. It took a little more time than I thought it was going to take. But it's important information, I think. Okay. We have had civilizations upon civilizations all down through time who have destroyed themselves. Atlantis was not the only one. I have had people go back to lifetimes on many, many other civilizations before that. And the majority of the time it was destroyed by man. I'm sorry to say this, guys, but you're the ones who usually cause the problems. Women were always the ones who were the female energy was always the ones trying to hold it together and keep it from happening. But in all of these civilizations, they would be given power, they would be given knowledge, they could do tremendous things with their minds, and they began to abuse it. It's like the guys would think, all right, I could do this with it, I could do that with it, and they began to abuse the privilege. And it was always the female energy was trying to counteract this, and it was very, very difficult. So they would end up, the civilization would be destroyed. And in the book, I talk about some that were destroyed by gigantic floods. Some of them were destroyed by where the earth would move, and it would be huge debris and earth, would be dumped onto the cities and everything. But always, and they had one where the sun came through and burned a hole in the ozone layer because of the scientists were focusing on that. A lot of this stuff will